I'm George Pearson, and this is part 2 of this Photoshop Elements project, recreating this Chinese poster. If you enjoy this project, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and also click the like button as well. If you want to learn more about Photoshop Elements, take a look at my full training on Amazon or on my website, and links are in the description. So far in this project, we've added in the water and then the sky, plus we've placed in the aircraft carrier and the flag right there, the airplane taking off, and the shadow of the airplane. Let's now make this even closer to the original by bringing in this darkening at the bottom and at the top of the image. So let's go back over here to our working picture. Here we go. Here's the sky layer, and here is the layer for the levels control for the sky. Click on that layer and then click on a new layer. This gives you a new layer above that levels control. On this, we'll be placing in a gradient. So let's just make sure our colors are foreground black and background white, and then click on the gradient tool. And in the gradient, let's set this for the first option, which is foreground to background right there. Now we have our opacity stops at the top, and then down below this we have our color stops. Click on the left one and click on the color, and we're going to change this to a mid-value blue, right around in here somewhere, about just a little bit below the blue, about halfway up between the pure cyan and the pure blue here on the right hand side. Now, the number that I actually used in my original demonstration image was 022684 right there. And then let's copy that number. Just right click, copy. Go over here to the right hand side, click on that color stop and click on color, and then just paste that in down here. So we have that same blue on both ends, and then right here in the middle, click right there. It gives you a new color stop, and that should come in as white. If it doesn't, just click on that and then drag that up into the upper left hand corner to make it white. And there we go. There's our basic gradient. Choose OK, and now with the gradient tool, I'm just going to stretch the picture a little bit here so I can go just outside. There we are, just outside of the top. Hold the Shift key down and then pull straight down. That gives you a straight line with that gradient. So it's darker top and bottom and then white in the middle. We now need to blend this into the layers in behind. So go up here to the blend mode and come down to multiply, and that just blends that into the background colors. And there we go. There's a real close match to their poster. So that takes care of that part of the image. There we go. There's our background coloration. Okay, now we can come in and begin working on our next fighter jets right here. This is just one picture repeated twice more, so I have 3 of these in here. We'll do the first one first and then just copy that layer. After that's done, we'll then put in those smoke trails in behind. Those are added in separately. For this one, I'll scroll back up to the very top, click on the top layers. This comes in as a new layer. We're going to place this picture in here like we did previously. So File, Place, and there's the one that you want right there. It's the J10. Choose Place, and that brings that in. Now the angle looks pretty good. I think we could leave the angle alone on this one. So I'll grab the corner and drag this in, and let's just get this about to the right size. It looks like that's about right, and the position's about right as well. Choose OK. So there's our first jet. Now we're going to zoom in on this image. There we are. And at this point, I'll once again grab the polygonal lasso tool and make a careful selection around the jet aircraft, and then we'll use that selection to make a layer mask and then do our colorization adjustments as soon as we have taken care of that. So at this point, I'll pause the video. I'll do my careful selection using the polygonal lasso tool, and as soon as the selection is made, I'll then bring the video right back up again. And there we go. There's the full selection around that jet, and then click on the layer mask button right there, and there's our jet with a layer mask. Okay, now let's just position our two additional jets. I'll zoom out a little bit here so I can see that. There it is. Let's make a copy of this. There we go. Here's our copy. So we have one jet back over here a bit. It's smaller, so grab the corner and just bring that down a little bit. Put that, right about there. Looks about right, maybe a little bit smaller. Let's copy that one, and we'll bring that one down here. And again, this one's even smaller still, so bring that one down a bit as well. There we go. Now again, because the layer here is still a smart layer with a smart object on it, that means that when I resized these, Photoshop Elements still went back to the original to refigure out that resize. It retains as much quality as possible in here, better quality than they retained in the original. Now my position is a little bit off possibly on this. I think I'll just move these in just a touch. That's a little bit better. Notice also that our ratio here is taller than theirs. They have a wider ratio than we do. Ours is kind of taller than theirs is. It's a little different positions just because of that difference in the ratio size. We'll stick with our default elements size in here. Okay, so we have our jets, but we now need to bring the size, or the coloration rather, of these to match this more closely. These are higher contrast in here. So I want to bring our contrast up a little bit. Now if I was going to be doing this strictly inside of Photoshop Elements 15, I would take these three layers right here and place these into a layer group. Just choose your layers, click on layer group, that places them in the group. You can then do the next step on the whole group instead of doing it on the individual layers. That allows you to keep these as separate layers. But I'll do this in the way it would have to be done in versions before Elements 15 as well. In this case, let's just right click on these and we'll merge all these layers together. So right click and merge layers. There we go. For our use, that's fine. I'm happy with what their positions. I'm not going to be changing those at all, so I'm okay to go ahead and merge these. That's one of those benefits of Photoshop Elements 15, is I could have put those into a layer group, kept the layers separate, and that would have allowed me to be have a little more control down the road. Or I could have left them separate and then do my color adjustments individually on each layer and get a million more layers in here, which I also don't want to do. So it's a little shortcut we're taking, but I think on this one it's fine to do that. Okay, let's now put an adjustment layer in here above this. So layer, new adjustment layer, and we'll use levels. Make sure you choose to use the previous layer to create a clipping mask. That just links it with the layer just beneath, in other words, with our jets in there. Now I want to increase the contrast a bit, so let's pull the black side up a little bit. Like that. I'll put it here to 42. So the blacks are blacker. And I'll make the whites whiter, so I'll pull the white side in. And I'll pull this in until they get pretty bright. Looks pretty good in here, about 215, 217 maybe right there. So that's much closer, as you can see right there. There we go, and just go ahead and close that. So we now have our three jets in place. Now we need to put in this smoke trails in here, little smoke trail things. So I'll zoom in a bit. This is one of those spots where I want to actually stretch the image out. And we'll zoom in so we get just the bottom of the jets and their smoke trails. They'll be coming in right in like this. And I'll do just the one for the main jet. And I want to have this on a layer underneath the jet layer, which is right there. It's the J10 layer. So let's make I should go down one layer below that and then make a new layer. That gives me a new layer underneath the jet layer. Okay, still using the polygonal lasso tool. There we go. I'm going to make a shape in here. And I'll come just over the engine like that. Again, remember this is in behind, so you won't see that. And I'll come down just into the water down here and do something. It's kind of a shape kind of like that, and that looks like it's about the right angle. Let's now fill this. We'll fill this with a white to black gradient, white up here and black at this end down here. So let's just reverse our colors, invert the colors there. go to the New Gradient tool, and in the tool options pane, you can see it right down here. Click where it says Gradient and click on the upper left hand corner. That's foreground to background. That's what you want. And then click just above your selection and then drag down to just past the bottom, and that fills that with that gradient. Okay, so there is the basis for our smoke trail. Let's deselect that. We now need to make this look like it's an actual smoke trail. There's a few steps on doing this one. First thing, let's blur this out so I kind of soften the edges up. Go up here to Filter and Blur and Gaussian Blur. And in Gaussian Blur, let's set this for 4.5 or thereabouts. And that softens up the edges, just like that. Okay, go ahead and choose OK. Now, as we know, smoke has kind of a rough pattern to it, so I want to get a rough pattern in here on this one. We'll do that with another filter. Back up to the Filter menu. Come down to the Filter Gallery in here. Let's bring the Filter Gallery up. There it is, and the one that I'm using is in the Sketch section right there, and it's called Reticulation. You see what it does? It just kind of puts in these randomized dot patterns in here. Choose OK, and that gives us this nice kind of interesting dot patterning happening. Now it's still too strong, so we need to blur this again. So Filter and Blur, Gaussian Blur, and let's bring the Gaussian blur this time down to 2.5 and choose OK. And there we go. So our blur is looking pretty good now as well. We're now going to copy this for the other jets. Had to be resized, of course, once we do that. And we're then going to merge those together. So this is our smoke layer. I think I'll just rename this one Smoke. There we go. Make a copy of that. Let's drag that copy over here to this jet. I'll zoom out a little bit here. There we go. And now we can shrink this down. So it's about the same end right there. Looks pretty good. Let's copy that layer to the new layer and then bring it over to our final jet. And same thing, shrink that down so that the bottom of that is about the same place. There we go. Now let's merge these three layers together. Hold the Shift key down, click on all three of those, and we'll merge these. Right click, merge layers. Let's now adjust the values on these, and that's with an adjustment layer. So go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Levels. Again, check that checkbox right there. And this time I want to adjust the values, the mid-range values. I want to lighten the whole thing up. So bring the mid-range values way over towards the left-hand side. And about 3.46 looks pretty good. That kind of matches the original. There we go. Close that down. So we now have our jet in there. Let's bring the opacity down just a little bit on the layers. Come down to the smoke layer and bring your opacity down to about 85% or so. Right there. And the last thing, let's just fade out the ends. And I'll do that with the eraser tool. Let me just bring this so we can see the tool options. There we go. There's the tool options. Click on the eraser tool. Go for a soft brush. Just find one of the soft brushes in here. And pretty good size on this one. Maybe about 150. I'll just type that in. And then just come down here and tap right at the bottom end with that, and that will fade out that bottom end on that smoke. A little bit of overlap onto the water is good, but just kind of softly fade out that end. Okay, that's taken care of. Let's now zoom out. So we have our jets in place. Here we are. Our jet trails are a little more visible than their jet trails. If you want to be exactly like theirs, you can bring the opacity down a little bit more. Looks like a lot more to kind of match theirs. I'll put this down about 50%. And that's pretty close. Of course, ours are against a different colored sky. Theirs are against white that kind of matches the smoke. Ours are against a different colored sky, so they're a little more apparent. But I think that's a good match for us on that. Okay, now let's work with our ships down below down here. We have two of these. We have a ship and then the submarine. We'll do the ship first. These again is just copied, and submarine just copied. So for the ship, let's go back up, make sure that we're on the top layer, and we'll go to File, Place, and we'll find the ship, and it's this one right there. Now this isn't the exact same picture that they have, but it's the same kind of a ship. You can tell by this twin tower thing here. This actually is the USS San Diego. It's an LPD-22, whatever that is, but it's a landing craft ship with these two tall towers on it. Very distinctive look for the ship. There you go, those two towers. And again, same kind of ships. They actually stole a landing craft U.S. Navy ship for their picture in here. Not too surprising. Let's just scale this down. We'll get this to be about right on this one. And that looks like that's pretty good sized in there. I'm going to go a little larger than they did just for effect. Now their angle is a little bit further down than ours. This is a little bit more across, so I'll come just outside of a corner and rotate that just a bit and try to match their angle. I'm just eyeballing this, just doing kind of visually. If you want to match it exactly what I did, that's a 7.64, negative 7.64 on the angle. Okay, there's our first ship. Let's now zoom in on that, and the same routine once again. I think I'll rotate that back a little bit. I'm not really quite happy with that. I'm going to take it back just a little bit. That's better. I'll go with that one. Okay, same thing again. This one's real simple, real easy, so I'll just do this one live here. We're going to make a selection around the ship, and then once the selection is done, we're going to use that selection to make our layer mask. We'll then go in and adjust for values in the picture. And on this one, we'll do some adjusting on the coloration as well, because theirs are kind of a bluish tint. So they're bringing a lot of blue into their image on these. They're probably trying to make it look like it's in the background by giving it a blue tint. It's not actually the right way to do things, but since we're copying what they did, we'll go ahead and we'll match that bluish value as well. There's not too much detail here to be worrying about, and it's way in the background, so you can do this relatively quickly. Don't go too fast, of course, with this particular tool, or it will collapse down the selection. You'll have to start over again. Just make sure you give it a moment between each click, and you're fine. Okay, just around the back side here, and then we'll come back to the start. A bit of a wave happening right there. Let's kind of go around that. And there we go. Layer mask button. There is the image with the layer mask. So now we need to make some adjustments on this so that it kind of blends in and matches everything else. We'll first make a copy and do our secondary ship. We'll merge the layers like I did with our jets, and then put our adjustment layers above that. So let's just back out a bit here so I can see what I'm doing. That's pretty good. Grab that ship layer, make a copy, move that up here, shrink that one down a little bit, and put it about there. I think that's pretty close. Merge these two layers, and again, this is that one step where different ways to approach this. You could do the adjustment layer on each individual layer and keep all of your layers. If you are working with Photoshop Elements 15, you can select both layers, click on this button, and that puts them into a group just like that. You can then apply your adjustment layer onto the group. That's a great way to go. But I'll keep this without the groups for this discussion since most people don't have the new version yet. So I'm just going to merge these two layers, right click, merge layers. They're now one object, which makes it easier to work with them. And we'll then put our adjustment layers on this. Let's first take care of our levels control. So layer, new adjustment layer, and levels. Again, make sure you check that checkbox. And on this one, I'm going to adjust the mid-tone values, just lighten these up a little bit. And let's take this up to about 1.3, 1.38, right about there. That looks pretty good. And that's about the right value on that. And close that down now. Come back, actually just leave it right where it is. And let's add another adjustment layer. Layer adjustment layer. This time hue saturation. Again, make sure you check that checkbox. Choose OK. Then click on Colorize. Right here, it gives color onto the ships. And now as I move these sliders, see how the color changes on the ships in there? And let's bring it up to 237. Worked out well for me last time. Looks like it may be a little different this time. I'm going to pull it back just a bit. I'll start off at 203. Let's bring our saturation up. So I have more color in there. To pretty high on the saturation, maybe about 80 on the saturation. And let's bring the lightness down just a little bit. Maybe about -2, -3, -4 in there somewhere. Maybe just change the color just a little bit more here. And looks like 211 is good on that for our coloration. And the saturation looks pretty good at 80. And lightness at -3. I think we have our ships taken care of. Okay, same thing again, this time for those submarines. So File, Place, and let's find our submarine. There it is right there. Choose Place. Now submarine comes in real small. That just happens to be with the resolution on the image that I had to work with. But it's okay, it will be cleared up as we adjust its position and size. Just a little tweak on the angle here. And the size looks pretty good. And notice how I cleaned up. That's again because this is coming in as a smart object and Photoshop Elements goes in and refigures that for that new size. Okay, same trick. We need to come in and make our selection around this one. I'll pull this open a bit wider. There we go. Now on this, they have it underwater. And to give the underwater effect, we have to get rid of all of this wave stuff in here. They've kept a little bit back here of the trail, just a touch. So we'll do the exact same thing. I'll start right down here at the tail. And I'm going to make my selection just above the waves, just keeping the actual submarine. If you look at their picture carefully, you'll see this is exactly what they did. They came in and they cut the waves off. Now let us work around. It makes kind of a strange looking submarine, but again, that's one of the Photoshop problems that they did on their image. Now if I was doing this one professionally, I wanted to keep a submarine here, I would probably do the submarine shape with my selection, kind of figure out where the shape should be, put the whole shape in, and then do some careful reconstruction to build in or rebuild the bottom of the submarine to cover up or get rid of that wave. It's black anyway, so that's pretty easy to do. Now at the top, they cut the stuff off, all these little conning tower things. They cut all that stuff off, so we can go ahead and do the same here. Again, it's underwater, that stuff's not being used. That makes sense. And then follow along the back edge of the sub. And then on the tail, we'll take it up over the tail fin a little bit, down just a touch, and I'll keep just a little bit of this tail in here, kind of doing the same direction as the wake. I'm just going to rough it up a bit on the back there. And then we'll bring it in back to our starting position. There we go. So you say we just cut the water off. And again, if I was doing this professionally for a good job, I would have made my selection in here, kind of figured out where the bottom of the sub should be, made the selection in there, and then using the clone stamp tool or whatever, filled in the bottom of that sub so we had a full sub shape. And you can see here though, you see right there is this big wave happening right here. That's happening right down in there. It's not the same picture, I don't believe, but it's the same shape, so you get the same kind of waves because the shape is the same. Okay, let's do the layer mask, which is right there. There's our layer mask, and there's our basic submarine. We can now back out just a little bit. And let's make a copy of that layer. And we'll use that for our second sub, which is up here somewhere. And we'll resize that down a little bit. And this is the last of these images that we're going to be dealing with. After this is done, we'll take care of those stars, and we'll take care of the text. Okay, so just up there somewhere, it looks pretty good. I think that's close enough for our use. Same trick again. Let's hold the Shift key down, select both of these, right-click, merge layers. If you're doing this in Photoshop Elements 15, that's the point where you can use a layer group instead. We now need to adjust the values. They're underwater, so I'm going to bring my opacity down about halfway. That shows some of the water texture through, which makes it look like it's actually underwater. That's kind of the effect we're doing in there. And let's adjust our colors on this one more time. So I'll do a new adjustment layer above this. And that's layer, adjustment layer, hue saturation. And again, clip that to the individual layer. And colorize on that. Let's pull the hue back up into the blues, which was up here somewhere. And let's see, about 235, 237 in there somewhere is pretty good. And let's bring our saturation up. Going very close to the numbers that we had before. So we had 80. That's pretty close to the numbers for that, just kind of matching that. And I'm going to bring the lightness up just a little bit this time. Yeah, +6, +7. And there we go. There's our submarines. Okay, now we can set this back to fit screen, see how we're doing. I think we're getting pretty close on our image here. And we now can begin working on the final steps, which is the stars and the text. Okay, I'm just going to bring this up a bit, use the zoom tool there, and let's maximize this again. Bring our layers back up. There we go. So we'll do those stars. Now these are just text stars. I think they use some kind of a previous existing clip art for this, so we're going to fake that as well. We use the type tool for this. And the typeface you want to use on this is called Wingdings. And that is a symbol typeface. So I'll change that down here. And it's way down towards the bottom of our list. I'll just scroll down till I find that. And here we go, Wingdings. Wingdings 2 and Wingdings 3. And you want the Wingdings 2 right there. Now for this next little step, you need to have a keyboard that has the mouse, or the numbers rather, on the right hand side of the keyboard. So if you work on a laptop, this probably won't work for you, but I'll show you how you can do that on a laptop as well. But for everybody else, here's the way you do this. You click in here, gives us our insertion point, hold the Alt key down, and then on the keypad type in 0, 2, 3, 4. And that's that star shape right there. And I'll just close that down. Okay, I'm going to be bringing up here another program. You see if I can find this thing quickly here. I'm just off screen looking at my Start menu. Windows Accessories. Let me try Accessories and System Tools. There we go. So Start menu, Windows Accessories, System Tools, and it's called Character Map. Let me just bring that up. It'll be launching up here in just a second. And there it is hiding up in the corner. I'll pull this one down. This is the Windows Character Map. It allows you to find all of your different typefaces. It'll drop down there. So there's all your typefaces. We're looking at Wingdings 2 right now. And we're getting into the stars down below. To scroll down a little bit. And right there, that's the one you want. Now in this program, just double click on that. It places it down here. Choose copy. And you can then come back into Photoshop Elements, put your insertion point with your text tool, and then paste. We'll then paste that shape in there. So that's how you can get to these shapes if you don't have that numeric keypad. Okay, let's close that down. Okay, that's step one. Now we have that on our page. Let's select that, change the size. These need to be smaller, and I found 13.5 looks about right in here. And then click on the color. I need a real light pastel, kind of light blue. I found a nice one, easy to find here. Use the Mac OS color swatch. And this is right there. Has a hexadecimal number of CCFFFF, which you also could type in over here and get that same pastel. So there's our first one. It's a brighter blue than they use. I think it looks a little bit better. I'll go with the brighter blue. Now select that like that. Let's right click and copy. And then hit the space bar and right click and paste. Now it looks like that's moving to the left, so I'm going to select all of those and make sure we have left justified. There we go. And then space, and then I'll use the keyboard shortcut Control V for paste. So space bar and the Control V for paste. And I'll just paste in a bunch of these just straight across, just like that. I think that might be, well, let's see. I'll use my arrow keys to just tap this back a little bit. I think that works. Make it look good. Okay, so there's the stars at the top. And let's see where those are hiding. Should be at the top. Here we go. Make a copy of this layer. And then drag that down to the bottom. And again, using your arrow keys on your keyboard, you can position that where you want that. So there's our top and our bottom stars. We now need our left and right side stars. So back over to the type tool. This time just leave everything else the same, but change to the vertical type tool. All of our settings are matched. Double check your layers. You can see right down here, sometimes this jumps to the bottom layer. So make sure you're on the top layer up here, and then click in your new insertion point. And then Control V, that should paste that star in, and there it is. And then space, Control V, space, Control V. It looks like it's centered one more time, so let's just fix that. Left justified, there we go. And just do the same thing again, space and Control V to bring your stars down. And that should be just about right. There we go. There's our left side stars. Let's now take that layer back on the background again. Okay, back to the top. That's this layer right here. Let's copy that again. I'll just use the right arrow key now and just walk this clear across to the right hand side. That then takes care of our stars. And the last thing we need to do is put the text on the page. So there we go. Okay, now for the text, go back to our type tool. We'll start off with a white. I'll go back to our default colors, and there's the white. And I'm going to change the typeface here. Change our size to 24. Oh, I'm still on that one. Let me just undo that. Yeah, sometimes you'll find this happens if you go to a type tool. So go back to our horizontal type tool, and you're changing type around. You may need to put a new layer above a text layer if that's where you were before, so you don't mess up that text. So there's just a new layer. And horizontal type tool, let's change the typeface up to a standard one. I couldn't find their typeface, so I'm using just a real standard one. And we'll just scroll to find that one. It's Comic Sans. Using the wheel on my mouse right there. Here we go, Comic Sans and regular right there. Let's change our size to 24. There we go. Okay, and let's double check that. This time let's go for centered. So it changes when you don't want it to, and it doesn't change when you do want it to. And right about the middle of the picture right here. There we go. Let's type in Chinese Navy Photoshop fail. Come down. I'll do a couple of spots down here. I'll put in their numbers. 1949 to 2017. And let's bring the size of this down. So select this and let's change the size down to an 18. There you go. Maybe that's too far away. I'm going to change this size right here. Just select that. So I'm clicking in front of the numbers and pulling up. That selects that space right there. And I can then change the type size of that space and use that space to adjust the spacing between those two lines very easily. Looks good. Now their lettering has a slight black outline to it, so we'll go ahead and we'll do that one. This is a layer style, so make sure that your move tool is selected and not the text tool. Go up to layer, come down to layer style, and then style settings and stroke. We'll leave it at black, and let's make sure that that is set for outside. And I think 2 is about right. That's a pretty close match to theirs. There we go. And finally, let's change the Photoshop fail to a red. Grab the type tool. Let's select that line of type. Click on your colors and put that nice bright red. They used a much darker red, but I think a brighter red reads more easily, so I'll go ahead and fix that one as well. And then just position that where you want it on your poster. It should snap to the middle of the page, just like that. Now there's one last little thing here to do before we finish, and that's there's kind of little starburst things. There's one here, there's one there, there's one here, there's one right here, there's one here, there's a little one here, there's a little one's kind of hard to see right there, little starburst effects, and one right on the front of the ship right down there. Let's go ahead and toss those in as our last step on this picture. Let's go back up to the top again, click on the top layer. Set the colors back to their default colors and then invert those so that white is in the foreground. Let's go to the paintbrush and I'll move this picture over just a bit. All these settings stay the same, so don't worry about those. Let's come down here, click where it says brush, and where it says default brushes, change this to assorted brushes. And then here we're going to scroll down in the assorted brushes set, and there are some starburst brushes down here. And we're getting kind of close to them. I'll use the wheel on my mouse here to roll down a little bit more easily. Here's some stars, and here's our starburst. We want this one right there. The one that says 49, that's starburst large, and it has an open center. You want the one here that says 50, it's starburst small. So double click on that to set that one. Let's set the size up to about 90. Or just type your size in. Set your opacity at 100. And there's our starburst brush. So we'll start off right here, the star right above the horizon right hand side. And I forgot one step. New layer. There we go. Can't forget that. There's our new layer. And then back down to that star. And just want to tap this several times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that gives us kind of a nice bright starburst right there. If you go a little bit off center, you get a little whiter looking stars. There's that one that's come down to our ship. Looks like there's one right about here. I'll just tap that a few times in there. And then the front here. Right there, there's one. And so we're not in the very front of the ship. Right there, a little sparkle there. There's something up here. I'll do just one tap for that one. There's something on the top of the tail for this jet. Kind of like that. There's a bit larger than mine, but that's okay. There's a little one right down here above the biggest jet. I'll do 2 taps on that. And something bigger up in here. And I'm going to kind of just go in a little bit of a circle here, make it a little bit larger area. There we go. That matches that bit right in there. Okay, so there's the starbursts. Now, mine are sharper looking than theirs. We can adjust that easily just by doing a little Gaussian blur on this layer. So filter and blur, Gaussian blur. It's already sitting at 2.5 from our last blur we did, and that looks fine for this as well, so I'll leave it at that. Choose OK. And there we go. That finishes off all of the steps now for this whole Chinese Navy Photoshop fail poster. So there you go. That's how you can do that poster. And as you saw, there are a lot of techniques and tricks in here that you can use on other kinds of images as well. And I think ours looks better than theirs. I think we did a little bit better job than they did on their original. But there it is. That's your Chinese Navy Photoshop fail. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it useful. If you like this video, click on the like button below to let others know. You can click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. I'm frequently uploading new training videos. Don't forget to check out my website at howtogurus.com.